They made her stand barefoot. The wood under Clara's feet was splintered and hot, but she didn't flinch. The heat wasn't what burned. It was the stares. Dozens of them. Drunken, greedy, yellow-toothed stares, watching her like she was meat hung on a rack. Next to her, little June trembled, fingers clutched around Clara's torn sleeve. The auctioneer raised his hand. "Let's not waste time, gentlemen. We begin the sale with these two sisters. Real pretty, real obedient. The older one can cook, clean, maybe even warm a bed." Someone in the crowd whistled. Clara didn't blink. She looked straight ahead, past the crowd, past the sun-scorched dust, and stared at the man who'd put her there. Jeb Callahan, her brother. He leaned against a post with a cigar in his mouth like this was just another deal. Just another Sunday. He didn't look at her. Not once. "You'll rot," she whispered under her breath. "You'll rot in a place even God doesn't look at." The crowd roared as the bidding began. $20. 25. 30. A hand rose, then another, then 5 more. Voices layered over each other like a storm of crows, hungry and loud, and just as the auctioneer slammed the gavel, the sound of hooves, not fast, not urgent, slow, heavy, purposeful, the kind of sound that made a town stop breathing, heads turned. The far end of the street, through a veil of heat and dust, a black horse emerged. The man riding it didn't look left or right. His coat was long and dark, brushing the stirrups. His hat cast a shadow over his face. Every step of the horse was deliberate, like it knew it was walking into a place that deserved to burn. He stopped. He dismounted. No one spoke. The outlaw's boots hit the ground with a crunch. Then silence. He walked toward the platform, passing the bidders like ghosts. Every eye followed him, but no one dared stop him. Clara's heart pounded. Jeb's face went pale. The man stepped in front of the auctioneer, still silent. "You here to bid, stranger?" the auctioneer asked, trying to keep his voice firm. The man reached into his coat. Slowly, tension cracked the air like a whip, and then he pulled out a silver coin, thick, heavy, etched with a hawk crest. Clara gasped. The crowd leaned in, because that coin didn't belong to any man living. It belonged to Henry Callahan, Clara and Jeb's father, the man they'd buried 10 years ago. Jeb dropped his cigar. The outlaw looked at him, eyes like winter steel, and finally he spoke. "You sold your sisters, just like you sold your soul that night, in '63. The coin glinted in the sunlight, its hawk crest flashing like a signal fire no one in town could ignore. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Henry Callahan's coin? Didn't he drown in the flood of '63? That can't be real." The outlaw closed his fist around the silver. "I rode 6 days to bring this back to the Callahans," he said, voice low but carrying. "Didn't figure I'd find the only Callahan man selling his sisters for pocket change." Jeb forced a grin that looked more like a crack in plaster. "Stranger, you don't know a thing about—" The outlaw's hand drifted to the revolver at his hip. The motion was slow, almost lazy, yet every man present felt the threat like a razor at the throat. "I know enough," he murmured. "I know Clara's birthday is January 3rd. I know June still sings Shenandoah when she's scared. And I know you left your pa to die the night the river ate the bridge." Gasps. A hat hit the dirt. Someone's whiskey bottle shattered. Clara's knees buckled. June caught her arm. The memories she'd buried clawed up like weeds through gravel, the wooden bridge groaning, water roaring black under moonlight, her father shouting Jeb's name, then silence and foam. Jeb spat, but couldn't find words. The outlaw stepped onto the auction block, boots thumping like funeral drums, and faced the sisters. His eyes softened, only for a breath, then hardened again like river ice. "I made your father a promise," he said, loud enough for every coward in range to hear, "that if his blood ever cried for help, I'd come running. Well," he flicked his gaze over the leering bidders. "I hear them crying." The auctioneer swallowed. Ladies and gents, be bidding is temporarily. A gunshot split the air. The outlaw hadn't drawn. The shot came from a balcony across the street. Wood splintered inches from his shoulder. Panic surged. Men dove for cover. Women screamed. Over the chaos, Clara saw the shooter, a tall figure in a gray duster leveling a Spencer rifle for a second blast. The outlaw spun, drew, and fired in one breath. The balcony post exploded. The shooter tumbled, rifle clattering. Dust swirled, and for a moment, the whole town seemed to hold its lungs. Then the outlaw turned back to Jeb. "Call off this sale," he growled, "or the next bullet writes your epitaph." Jeb's mouth opened, but sound refused to come. His eyes darted to the unconscious gunman, to the terrified bidders, to the sisters he'd priced like mules, all while the outlaw's revolver hung steady as the gallows. Clara felt June's tiny hand squeeze hers. For the first time since their world shattered, hope flickered. Small, fragile, unstoppable. The auctioneer cleared his throat, voice trembling. Gentlemen, it appears the sale is suspended." Across the street, townsfolk peeked from doorways, sensing the winds had shifted. Nothing in Deadwood Crossing would ever be the same again. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, another pair of eyes, cold, calculating, watched the outlaw with a smile that promised deeper trouble yet. The coin hadn't stopped gleaming, even as dust rose from the fallen sniper, even as the crowd dispersed like rats sensing fire. That hawk-etched silver kept shining in the outlaw's hand, like it was carrying the sun of a past that refused to set. Jeb stood frozen. Face pale, eyes hollow, Clara's breath came in shaky bursts. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from memory. That coin, she remembered it now. Her father never let it leave his pocket. He said it was for a day when all else fails. And now it was here, with him. She stepped forward, voice soft but steel-lined. "You said you knew my father. But how do I know you're not just another gun with a fancy lie?" The outlaw looked at her, really looked. Not the way the crowd had, not with hunger or pity. He looked at her like a man who'd traveled through hell carrying someone else's pain and finally found the reason he hadn't let it kill him. He knelt down slowly and held out the coin to her. She took it. Cold, heavy, familiar. "Your father gave me that the night before the flood. Told me it belonged to his firstborn if he didn't come back." The outlaw's voice cracked at the edges. "He made me swear to keep it secret unless she was in danger so deep she couldn't pray her way out." Clara stared at him. Who are you?" He stood again, towering but still. "My name's Elias," he said. "Henry Callahan's blood brother. We fought under Captain Morgan in the war. He saved my life twice. Third time I couldn't. Save his. So I've been riding ever since. Not for justice?" He looked at Jeb. "For debt." Jeb sneered. "You don't know anything about what I've been through. You think this town gives a damn about some orphaned girls? I did what I had to. Those two cost me every dime Pa left us." Clara's voice was sharp. "He didn't leave us anything. You gambled it away and blamed ghosts." Jeb stepped forward, finger pointed. "Don't you judge me. I fed you. I bled for this family when Pa died. What did you do, huh? Cried under the bed and waited to be saved? And then..." Elias moved, fast as a viper. His hand struck Jeb's collar, yanking him off the platform and slamming him into the nearest post. The crowd flinched. June shrieked, but Clara didn't move. Elias's voice dropped to a growl. "I've killed men for far less than what you've done, but I won't pull this trigger today, not unless she tells me to." He looked at Clara, waiting, and for a long, breathless second, she almost said yes. But then June's hand found hers again, and Clara's voice came out low, steady. "No. Let him walk. Let him live in the shame he tried to sell." Elias stared at her. A faint nod. Then he let Jeb drop. The man crumbled to the dirt like the lies he'd built his pride on. The sisters turned. Clara didn't look back, but they didn't see what Elias did. From behind the saloon window, a glint caught his eye. Another man. Watching. Grinning. A face. From his own past. The sniper hadn't acted alone. And this town? This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The streets of Deadwood Crossing had gone quiet, but not safe. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the broken auction stage. Clara held the hawk coin like it was a relic. June clung to her skirt, silent as snowfall. Elias stood watch. Hadn't holstered his gun since the sniper fell. His eyes scanned every rooftop, every alley, like he expected the devil himself to crawl out next. "Who was that man?" Clara finally asked. Elias didn't look at her. His voice was ice. "A marker. Someone telling me I've been found." Clara stepped closer. "Found by who?" He finally turned. "By the men who killed your father." Silence fell like a dropped coffin lid. June gasped. Clara stiffened. "You said he drowned," Clara whispered. "No," Elias replied. "That's what Jeb told you." But Henry didn't die in that flood. He made it across the bridge that night. Bloodied, but alive. What killed him came later. A knife in the dark, not the river. And it wasn't random. He knelt in front of June, voice gentling. "Your father was onto something. A secret. One that started with this town." Clara looked toward the saloon, then the bank, then the jail. Her voice trembled. "You mean someone here is part of it," Elias finished. "Or all of it." Just then, a horse's scream shattered the silence. A riderless mare bolted. Down the main road, blood foaming at its flank. Behind it, dust, movement, and then gunfire. Elias shoved both sisters behind a water trough and crouched low, eyes narrowing. A group of riders stormed into town, 5 of them masked and armed. One carried a black flag with a crimson handprint. Clara whispered, "What is that?" Elias's face went stone. "That," he growled, "is the mark of the Crimson Ledger. The men who killed debts instead of collecting them." The riders spread out, silent as ghosts. One dismounted, walked toward the auction stage, and nailed a note into the post with a Bowie knife. Then they turned. Vanished into the outskirts like smoke. Elias waited, then crept forward. The note read, "The girl carries the truth. The man carries the debt. Deliver them both by moonrise, or we'll take the town instead." Clara's face drained of all color. Elias ripped the knife out and crumpled the note. "They know who you are, and they think you've seen what your father died for." "But I haven't," Clara whispered. "You will," he said grimly. "Because your father didn't just die for a secret. He buried it. Somewhere only his daughters could find it." He glanced at the church bell tower, the highest point in Deadwood. "We're not running. We're going to find what your father left behind, and we're going to burn their whole damn ledger to the ground." Clara swallowed hard. "Why are you doing this for us?" Elias's eyes flicked to the coin in her hand. "Because the day Henry gave me that, he didn't just call me brother. He said, 'If anything ever happens, you protect my girls like they're yours.' He stepped closer. And now you are." The church stood at the far edge of Deadwood, weather-beaten and leaning like a tired old man. Its cross was chipped, its bell silent, and somewhere beneath its rotting floorboards, a dead man's promise was waiting to be found. Clara stared at it like it might breathe. June held her hand tightly, whispering, "I don't want to go in." Elias gently touched the little girl's shoulder. "You won't be alone, I swear it." They stepped inside. The pews were empty, dust dancing in the air like old ghosts. The altar was cracked. A single candle flickered in the corner, forgotten but still fighting. Elias's boots echoed as he walked toward the pulpit. "Your father always said truth belongs in God's house. If he hid something, it'll be here." Clara's voice was hoarse. "What do you think it is?" A letter? A name? Elias shook his head. Something bigger, something dangerous. He reached beneath the altar, pulling away planks with practiced hands, until his fingers hit metal. Clara gasped. Trap door. He pried it open. Darkness. The air that rose was cold. Not just underground cold. Secrets don't want to be found cold. I'll go first, Elias said. No, Clara said, stepping forward. It's time I stop hiding. They descended together. Below, they found a tiny stone chamber, no bigger than a pantry. At its center, a wooden chest sealed with rope and iron, and beside it, a skeleton, still dressed in army blues, its hands folded over its chest. A rusted revolver at its side. Clara dropped to her knees. It's him. June knelt beside her, eyes wide. Papa? Elias lowered his head. This was his last stand. He knelt by the chest and unlatched it. Inside, a worn leather journal filled with coded pages, a tattered map drawn by hand showing the Deadwood mines, and something marked beneath them, and a photograph, faded, burned at the edges, of Elias, Henry, and a third man. Clara held the photo up. Who's that? Elias's jaw clenched. That's Sheriff Wallace. Clara blinked. The sheriff? He served with Pa? Elias nodded. They were brothers in arms, and now he runs this town like he owns the soil it's built on. But Henry told me once if anything happened to him, Wallace would be the last man he'd trust. Suddenly, bang! The trapdoor above slammed shut. Bootsteps, muffled voices, laughter. Elias spun toward the ladder. They followed us. Clara backed up, heart racing. We're trapped. Elias grabbed the chest, slung the journal and map into his coat, then yanked his revolver. Not for long. He glanced at Henry's skeleton, his voice low. I failed you once, brother. Not again. He turned to the girls. When I say run, you run. Don't stop, don't cry, just keep moving. Clara nodded, fire in her eyes now. June clutched the map tight. From above, boots scraped wood. A voice shouted down, Time's up, traitor! The ledger wants what's owed! Elias smirked. Then come collect. He raised his gun and shot the lantern. Flames burst. Smoke filled the chamber. The trapdoor blew open. Elias roared like a cornered beast. Clara screamed as he pushed them forward, into fire, into smoke, into the fight their father died trying to finish. The fire clawed up the chapel walls like a wild beast let loose. Elias burst through the trapdoor first, revolver drawn. Clara followed, coughing, shielding June in her arms. The pews were ablaze. Stained glass windows cracked from the heat. Shadows moved through the smoke. Armed men, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Elias fired, one dropped, then another. He turned to Clara. Get to the stable. Take the back trail into the canyon. Go! Clara hesitated. I'm not leaving you. You ain't, he growled. We're just buying space to breathe. He grabbed the burning Bible from the altar, tossed it across the room. It exploded, sending burning pages flying and forcing the attackers to duck. They ran through the back of the church, into the cemetery behind it. June cried, They're chasing us! Clara held her tighter. Not for long, baby. Not if we make it to the river. But just as they reached the iron fence surrounding the graves, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Sheriff. Wallace hat low, coat spotless, rifle already raised. Clara skidded to a stop. Elias came up behind her, cursing under his breath. You. Wallace's voice was calm. Too calm. Well, this didn't take long. Elias's finger twitched near his holster. You came to finish what you started? Wallace tilted his head. You don't know how deep this goes, son. Your brother, he wasn't the man you thought? He was better than you, Elias snapped. The sheriff chuckled. He was a thief, and worse, a man who wouldn't play along. He found something in those mines, something he shouldn't have. Instead of cutting me in, he ran to the church. Clara stepped forward, shaking. He trusted you. He called you family. Wallace's face hardened. That's the problem. With family, they bleed when you squeeze. He looked to June, and now his brats carry the truth. Shame, really. I like the quiet. Elias drew. So did Wallace. Boom. Their shots collided in air. Elias dove sideways, rolled, came up firing. Clara pulled June behind a tombstone. Bullets ripped through the night. The smell of gunpowder drowned the smoke. Elias's shot clipped Wallace's shoulder. He stumbled, dropped to one knee. End this, Elias, he snarled. You don't know what you're protecting. I don't care, Elias shouted back. I promised Henry I'd keep them safe. Wallace laughed, blood running down his arm. You think this is just about a mine? That journal doesn't lead to gold, it leads to names. Names of men who run this territory, men who'd kill 1,000 kids to stay hidden. Elias paused, breathing hard. Then I'll burn it all. Wallace gritted his teeth. You just signed your death warrant. He vanished behind the gravestones, retreating into the dark. Clara rushed to Elias. We need to leave. He won't come alone next time. Elias turned to her, face grim. He won't have to. The whole town's bought. The bankers, the judge, even the preacher. June held up the map, dirt and ash on her face. What do we do now? Elias looked at the map, then at Clara. We dig. Clara. We dig where your father marked, because whatever he died hiding, it's the only chance we've got to finish this war. The moon was high as they reached the southern ridge. Below, the pine trees curled around the base of the canyon like watchful serpents. Elias held the torn map against the lantern light, cross-referencing each notch and ink-stained direction. Clara stood beside him, boots muddied, hair tangled from wind and ash, clutching June close. This is it, Elias said. This ridge, Clara whispered. It's just a graveyard. Not quite. He pointed at an unmarked patch behind an old tree stump where the earth looked sunken and disturbed. Clara's heart dropped. You think he's down there? Elias shook his head. No, I think what he hid is. They began to dig, with hands, boots, even Elias's Bowie knife. The soil was cold, but soft. June kept watch, gripping her father's journal like it was the last piece of him she had. Then, a dull thud. Wood. Elias brushed the dirt aside, revealing an old wooden crate buried just beneath the surface. He lifted it out slowly, pried open the lid with his knife, and froze. Inside lay a rusted revolver, a velvet pouch of old coins, and a blood-stained letter. Clara leaned in, reading the faint ink. To whoever finds this, if you're reading, I failed to keep them safe. Sheriff Wallace isn't working alone. The preacher forged the marriage papers. The bank funded the trade. My daughters were to be sold, not for gold, but for silence. They saw something in that mine, something not human. Burn this town. To the ground if you must, but don't let it happen again. Clara's hands trembled. My father, he knew everything. Elias said nothing. His eyes were locked on the revolver. The initials carved in the handle, H.W. Henry Winslow, her father's gun. But it was then June said something that froze them both. Uncle Elias, if Papa was never buried here, she pointed across the clearing, then who is that? A fresh grave, marked only by a wooden cross. No name, no flowers. Elias rose, eyes narrowing. They approached slowly, every step heavier than the last, and as Elias knelt, brushing away the loose soil, something caught his eye, the edge of a black uniform coat. Sheriff's issue. Clara gasped. That's not. But Elias had already pulled it back. What they saw underneath the dirt stopped their hearts. It was Deputy Mark Hensley, face pale, throat slit, shot in the chest twice. And clutched in his lifeless hand was a ledger. Elias flipped through it, dozens of names, dates, and next to each entry, paid, delivered, erased. Clara stared at the ledger. Those aren't sales. They're human auctions. Elias whispered, that church wasn't just a sanctuary. It was a marketplace. And then, gunshots echoed through the trees. Elias shoved the crate behind the stump. They followed us, voices in the dark. At least 6. June hid beneath the roots. Clara knelt beside her. Elias took one last look at the ledger and tucked it under his coat. He turned to Clara. This changes everything. She nodded, jaw tight. Then let's change it. Elias fired the first shot. It echoed like thunder across the canyon, dropping the first pursuer in silence. Clara pulled June. Behind the stump, shielding her with her body. Another bullet cracked through the night, splintering bark inches from Elias's head. 6 men, maybe more. They ain't law, Elias growled, reloading. They're cleaners. Cleaners? Clara asked, heart pounding. The kind sent to erase every loose end. He tossed her the ledger. That's our insurance now. You guard it like your soul depends on it. June clutched it to her chest. 3 more shots rang out. One grazed Elias's arm, blood soaking into his sleeve. But he didn't flinch. Just kept firing, moving with the grace of a man who danced with death before. And then came the voice. Low. Raspy, echoing through the pines like a hymn from hell. Elias, bring them back. Clara's blood ran cold. That voice, she whispered. Elias stiffened. Preacher Hale. The preacher stepped from the shadows, black robes fluttering, eyes gleaming with something not human. Behind him, figures emerged. Half men, half silhouettes, twisted, deformed. They weren't just traffickers, they were something else. What the hell is this? Clara breathed. Elias stepped forward. Experiments. From the mines. Henry saw it. That's why they marked him for death. Preacher Hale raised a hand. One of the creatures charged, shrieking, its mouth wider than any man's should stretch. Elias met it mid-run and shot it through the skull. It didn't stop. It just kept crawling, like bone and flesh were suggestions, not laws. June screamed. Run! Elias shouted. To the church! Clara dragged June down the ridge as bullets flew and monsters howled behind them. The town lights flickered in the distance, dimmer than they remembered. When they reached the church, Elias kicked the doors open. The altar was gone. In its place, a trapdoor, yawning open, with stairs descending into blackness. They were never praying here, Elias whispered. They were shipping. Clara set the pews on fire. One by one, flames roared to life. Old hymnals, flags, the pulpit. This place, she said, voice trembling, is cursed. Elias lit the fuse from a dynamite stick. Clara stared at him. You brought dynamite to church? I bring it everywhere. They bolted outside as the fire spread like a beast unchained, and just as they crossed the road, boom. The church exploded behind them, flames licking the sky, windows shattering, but from the smoke, something moved, something tall, not Hale, not human. It stepped through the burning doors and looked straight at Clara. June whispered, That's not a preacher. Elias raised his gun. That's what they were worshipping. The flames were still climbing when Elias knelt beside June, his hand shaking from the blast behind them. But Clara wasn't staring at the fire anymore. She was staring at him. You knew, didn't you? She said quietly. That thing in the church. You've seen it before. Elias looked up, his jaw clenched. I was raised here, Clara. Before the mine, before the preacher, before the screams. Clara took a step back. June whispered, You're not just some outlaw, are you? Elias didn't answer right away. He turned toward the burning church. The thing that had stepped out of it was gone, vanished into the smoke. He pulled a worn, scorched paper from inside his coat. It was so old it looked like it would crumble. It was a birth record. Elias Gideon, born to Annabelle Hale. Dysonorchia gasped. Hale, The preacher's your father? Elias nodded slowly. And I was his first experiment. 25 years ago, when the railroad deal fell through, Preacher Hale turned to something else to fund the town. Blood. He struck a deal with men from the East. Dark coats, white gloves, no faces, promising bodies in exchange for gold. The townsfolk didn't ask questions, just took their cut. Even the sheriff, even Clara and June's brother, Mason. But I was a mistake, Elias continued, voice ragged. I survived what I wasn't supposed to. I broke out, and I burned their lab. Or thought I did. Clara staggered. You came back for revenge? He shook his head. I came back because they didn't die. They moved. Underground. He looked toward the cemetery. Toward the collapsed mine beyond it. That ledger June's carrying isn't just proof of trafficking. It's a map. A route to the real facility. The one no one speaks of anymore. Suddenly, behind them, hooves, dozens. A dust storm rose from the ridge as riders descended. Black coats, red scarves, cleaners, and leading them was Mason. Alive. Eyes cold. Smile like ice. Thought you'd burned the town down, Elias? He called. Out. You didn't even scratch the surface. Clara's knees buckled. You... Mason! You were supposed to protect us. He shrugged. I did. By selling you to men who wouldn't ruin you right away. Elias raised his revolver. You don't want to do this, Mason said calmly. You know what they'll do to you if you lose that ledger, and what they'll do to them. He pointed, at Clara, then at June. Hand it over, and maybe they walk. Clara looked at Elias. He looked back, then tossed the ledger into the fire. The page sizzled, the map curled, secrets turned to ash. June screamed, but Elias stepped in front of her and whispered, Now they can't use it, but we're still going to find them. The fire still raged behind them, casting Elias's face in flickering red shadows. The map was gone, but so was their advantage. June held tight to Clara's hand, both of them trembling, not from the heat, but from Mason's gaze. He didn't even flinch as the flames licked closer. Instead, he gave a slow, mocking clap. Well played, brother, Mason called to Elias. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Elias didn't move. You call them sisters, Elias said, voice flat, but they're just inventory. To you. Mason's smile grew colder. We all play our part, even you. Don't act like you didn't come here hoping to find what father left behind. Clara's eyes darted between them. Wait, what did he mean? You were looking for... It too? Elias didn't answer, but the truth clung to his silence. Yes. He had come back for vengeance. Yes. He had wanted the ledger, but he hadn't expected them. Two sisters with more courage in their veins than the entire town put together. June stepped forward. So what? Now, Mason, you take us again? Chain us up? Sell us to the next monster who walks through your filthy door? Mason raised a hand, and the black-coated riders tightened the circle. No, Mason said smoothly. This time, you're not merchandise. You're leverage. He pulled out a silver pocket watch and flipped it open. At midnight, the train from Carson's Gulch rolls through with the buyers. I tell them your little outlaw burned the ledger, unless he trades you for the original. Clara's heart stopped. There's an original? Elias grit his teeth. There was, buried beneath the preacher's tombstone. Later that night, they took shelter in the abandoned schoolhouse just past the edge of town. Rain began to fall, but Elias barely noticed. He was carving something into a bullet. One word. Hail. June sat beside him, wrapping her arms around her knees. Why did you burn the ledger? Because they would have killed you to get it, Elias replied. But now they want the original, Clara said. And they know where it is, don't they? Elias nodded. Clara stood. Then we have to get it first. Elias looked up. You think I'd let you near that place? Clara's eyes were steel. You don't let us do anything. You don't own us. June stood too. You saved us, Elias. Now let us help save you. He looked at them. Really looked at them. And something shifted in his chest. They weren't victims anymore. They were fire. Midnight ticked closer, and deep beneath the graveyard, past rusted iron gates and tunnels the town forgot, a hidden vault waited. Inside, the true record, the master list of every girl taken, every man paid, and every sheriff, preacher, and mayor who had taken their cut. But before they could reach it, someone else did. A shadow stood in the crypt. Long. Coat, broad shoulders. 2 silver pistols. Not Mason, not a rider, someone worse. He turned, smiled. I was hoping you'd come, Elias, the stranger said, because your father promised me a replacement. The air beneath the graveyard was thick, not just with dust and mold, but memory. Elias moved first, lantern in one hand, Colt in the other. Clara and June followed, silent, breath caught somewhere between fear and fury. They stepped into the stone crypt under Preacher Hale's marker, and that's when they saw him. A man leaning against the far wall, face half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The light caught a jagged scar running down his cheek. His coat was stitched with bullet holes, and his presence felt like a storm waiting to break. He tipped his head toward Elias. Thought you'd be quicker, but you always did like making an entrance. Elias didn't blink. Rook! Clara could feel the tension crackle between them. June instinctively reached for Elias's arm. Who is he? Someone who should have died years ago, Elias said. Low. Rook chuckled. Oh, I did. Right after. Your father buried me alive, with his secrets. He held up a sealed black envelope, thick, stamped with a symbol, 3 red flames. June squinted. That symbol, that's on the old church wall. Clara's voice shook, and carved into the collars of the girls Mason sold. Rook grinned, wide and venomous. Your father didn't just sell girls. He built a society, one that stretched. From Carson's Gulch to the governor's own parlor, I was his ledger keepers until I learned too much. He stepped forward, shadows dancing over his face. You think burning the fake ledger would end it? That was theater. This... He held up the envelope. This is the script. Names, payments, witnesses, the truth. Elias raised his gun. Then why haven't you sold it already? Rook's eyes darkened. Because it's not about gold anymore. It's about revenge on every man who buried me and every one of their sons still living. Clara stepped between them, voice trembling, but firm. And what about the daughters? That stopped him. What about the girls sold, branded, beaten? Are they just names to you too? Rook stared at her for a long, cold second. Then, something shifted in his eyes. They were the only ones who ever looked me in the eye. The only ones who remembered. He tossed the envelope onto the stone altar. Take it. Do what you want. But when this town burns, don't say I didn't warn you. Then he walked out. No gunfire, no blood. Just silence. Above ground, thunder cracked. The wind howled through the ruins of the old church. Elias, Clara, and June stood in the doorway. The black envelope in Elias's grip. Inside it, names of girls sold, prices paid, dates and signatures, including Mason's, Sheriff Daly, and even the mayor's wife. June whispered, If we release this, the whole town will turn. Elias looked toward the rising storm. No, he said, the whole town will finally wake up. The letter shook in Elias's hand. Every signature in that black envelope was a nail in someone's coffin. Mayor's wife, the sheriff, the banker who paid to relocate 10 orphan girls. Even the preacher's name was there, with thank you notes signed in children's handwriting. Clara sat on the edge of a broken pew, pale and quiet. June stared at the wall, her breath shallow. Elias said nothing for a long time. Then, We can't go to the law. Clara looked up sharply. You think I care about the law now? Elias's voice was tight, haunted. The sheriff is on that list. You show him this, he'll bury you before sundown. And if we hide it, June whispered, then we're no better than them. That silence again. Thick, charged. Then Elias spoke like a man who had nothing left to lose. We don't hide it. We perform it. Clara blinked. Perform? The mayor's hosting that fancy harvest gala tomorrow night. The whole town will be there. The church choir, the preacher, even Mason's friends in suits and silk gloves. He turned to June. You still have that music box? June frowned. The one Mama left? Why? Elias smiled, the kind of smile that burned bridges behind you. Because it plays for exactly 7 minutes, long enough to read every single name out loud. The next day moved like a storm. June borrowed a dress from the parson's widow. Clara found boots that didn't bleed. Elias got himself invited to the gala, under the name of his late father. He walked into the mayor's ballroom clean-shaven and cold-eyed, escorting 2 women no one recognized. But everyone stared at, especially Mason, especially when he saw his sisters. The chandelier gleamed above them like glass fire. Laughter buzzed, champagne flowed, and just as the mayor stepped up to speak, June turned the music box key. The melody began, soft, sweet, innocent. Then Clara's voice rang out, clear as judgment. On the 7th day of winter, 1869, the following men signed the purchase order for 3 minor girls. Heads turned. Faces paled. Clara read each line like a knife across velvet. Names, dates, crimes. The crowd was frozen, until the preacher stood. Lies, he bellowed. Filth, fabrications of whores and lunatics. Then Elias stepped forward. No preacher, just your signature. He held it up, and that's when it happened. A gunshot. From the balcony. June screamed. Clara ducked. Blood spilled across the marble floor. Not Clara's, not Elias's, the mayor's wife, shot by her own husband. The crowd erupted. Screams, running heels, more gunshots, and behind it all, the music box played on. Smoke curled through the velvet curtains like the breath of judgment. Clara stood frozen in her heels, her voice caught in her throat. The music box had stopped spinning, but the town hadn't. It was coming apart at the seams. The mayor's wife lay bleeding across the marble floor, gasping for words that wouldn't come. Sheriff Dalton shoved through the crowd, pistol drawn, spit flying from his mouth. Who brought that damn letter? Who read it? But Elias was already moving. He didn't run. He walked like fire with boots on. He lifted his revolver, eyes locked with the sheriff's. Put your gun down, Dalton. You're next on that list. Clara grabbed June's arm. Out the back, now! But June wasn't moving. Her eyes were fixed on one man across the room. Mason. Her brother. Her betrayer. Mason's face had gone white with rage, or maybe fear. You were supposed to disappear, he hissed across the ballroom. You were supposed to die in the brothel, like the rest, Clara snapped. You sold us! Mason stepped forward. And I paid for you to survive. You think you'd be alive without me? Elias moved between them like a shield. You're right, Mason. They're alive because of you. And tonight, you're gonna regret that more than anything you ever did. Sirens. From the old church tower rang out, false alarms meant to cover up panic. Too late. Outside, townsfolk gathered. They heard the gunfire, the screams, and then the names. Someone had thrown the pages out the ballroom window. They fluttered through the night like ash from a moral fire. One landed in the hands of Old Man Greaves, the blacksmith whose daughter vanished 10 years ago. Another in the hands of Millie Thorne, who lost her sister to the traveling orphan train. They read the names and they saw the truth. The town wasn't just watching a scandal. It was waking up to a reckoning. Inside, the chandelier crashed to the floor. Clara and June ducked behind an overturned table, Elias covering them with his gun drawn. "You said you had a plan," Clara breathed. "I didn't say it was a good one," Elias whispered. Then, from the corner of the room, a second gunshot cracked. Sheriff Dalton spun. Blood bloomed from his chest. He hit the floor like a sack of lies, and behind him stood a girl with trembling hands and tear-streaked cheeks. Little Maisie, one of the girls from the brothel, no older than 15, holding Dalton's gun. The ballroom went silent again. Elias slowly took the gun from her hand. "You did what the law was too corrupt to do." The town square had never been this loud. Not on Founder's Day. Not during harvest. Not even when the train first rolled through years ago. But now? Now it roared, with fury, with grief, with voices that had stayed silent far too long. People spilled, out from saloons, general stores, and back alleys, waving pages from the Outlaw's journal. Pages that named names, dates, places, prices. Children sold like cattle. Women trafficked under marriage contracts, and the names of men who paid to keep it all quiet. Mayor Harlan tried to speak over them from the balcony of the courthouse. "This is slander, lies from an outlaw looking to burn our proud legacy." But the crowd only grew louder. Someone hurled a whiskey bottle. It shattered at the mayor's feet. Another voice rose above the chaos, one they all recognized. Old man. Greaves. His voice cracked with age, but every word hit like a hammer. "You think we forgot, Harlan? You think we didn't notice our daughters never came back from those church-sponsored missions?" Gasps, whispers, then screams. The crowd surged forward. Inside the Grand Bell ballroom, June clutched Clara's hand, trembling. "Are we safe?" Elias checked the last bullet in his revolver. "For now, but safe isn't the goal anymore." He pulled something from his coat, one last page. Clara read it, then staggered back like she'd been shot. "No, this can't be." The name at the bottom, Mason Whitlock. And under it, their mothers. Not just a name, a price. He didn't just sell his sisters. He sold their mother too, and lied for years that she died giving birth. Outside, Mason was trying to disappear into the alleys behind the saloon. But someone was waiting. Little Maisie. The girl who shot Sheriff Dalton was holding the shotgun like it was made for her. "You think you can just walk away?" she whispered. Mason laughed. "You gonna shoot me, little girl?" A low voice behind him cut through the dusk. "No, but I will." It was Elias. Gun raised. No smile, no mercy. "You lied to them. Lied to me. We're done here." Mason turned, but not to run. He pulled a matchstick from his vest, and behind him, the barn was soaked in kerosene. With a flick of his wrist, he lit the match and dropped it. Flames leapt into the night sky like the devil himself had risen. Screams filled the air again. Horses reared, bells clanged. Elias grabbed Maisie. "Run!" Mason's laughter echoed behind them. "If I burn, we all burn." Flames roared like angry gods, swallowing the barn, then licking toward the courthouse. People screamed, but no one ran toward Mason. No one tried to save him, because now everyone saw him for what he was: a traitor, a trafficker, a coward hiding behind charm and a well-pressed vest. Mason stumbled back, coughing in the smoke, watching. His empire turned to ash. Elias burst through the alley with Maisie in his arms. Clara and June followed, skirts singed, eyes wide with horror. The town square was chaos, fire everywhere, people pushing, shouting, trying to save what little hadn't. Already turned black, and then over it all, a gunshot. It didn't come from Elias. It came from behind, from Clara. Her hand shook, smoke dancing around her like a mourning veil. Mason dropped to his knees. The bullet hadn't hit his heart. It struck low, enough to make him suffer. You don't deserve to die clean, Clara whispered, stepping closer. You lied to us. All our lives. You sold our mother. You sold us. You sold your soul. He tried to speak, but blood filled his mouth before he could. A second later, the tower bell above the church cracked in half and fell, crashing down onto the sheriff's office like a symbol of justice finally delivered. The flames didn't stop, but Elias wasn't watching the fire anymore. He was watching June. She was standing still, eyes on the courthouse, lips trembling. That's where they kept her, she said softly. Our mother. That's where they hid her until the deal was done. Elias stepped beside her, pressing a note into her hand. It's from the last page Mason tried to burn. She never died, June. She was taken, but she lived. June's eyes widened. Where? In a sanctuary far north. Paid off to keep quiet. She escaped 5 years ago, but was too scared to come back. And now? Clara asked. She sent word. She's coming back. As the town watched the courthouse fall, as the people screamed and the sky turned red, a single black carriage rolled in from the north road. No horses. Just a woman inside. Face June hadn't seen since she was a child, but somehow recognized instantly. She stepped out slowly. Hair gray, shoulders strong, eyes glassy with tears. June collapsed into her arms. Clara joined her. The three women held each other as the fire burned behind them, their past turned to smoke, their future reborn in ash. Elias stood back. He didn't move, didn't smile. Maisie slipped her small hand into his. She's really their mama? She is. You gonna stay? He didn't answer. He just looked at June one last time and nodded. Then he turned, climbed onto his horse, and rode into the smoke. No words, no promises, just peace. 1 week later, the town began rebuilding. A new sheriff, a real school for girls, and on the front of the new town hall, nailed into the wall, the journal, every page, every name, every truth. Because some stories shouldn't be buried, they should be carved in. Wood and fire. If this story gripped your soul and left you speechless, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon, because on this channel, every tale leaves a mark that never fades. Don't miss what comes next.